Okay, thank you very much. My name is Ketan Gadger, and I from TIP, looking after OpenWiFi. I think the purpose of today's session is really, as I described it, to have a kind of unvarnished and honest view of what it's like to deploy OpenWiFi and OpenLAN. I think the idea is that we're going to hear from two people who are deploying or planning to deploy, what the experience has been. One provider who can speak about the experiences they've had, a brief panel discussion, and then an overview of the testing and validation that TIP is doing in this space in order to certify OpenWiFi and OpenLAN solutions. So with that, I'd just like to hand over to Udit from Spectra.
Hi, good evening. I'm Udit Mehrotra from Sham Spectra. So Spectra, we are part of a 4-decade-old Sham Telecom group based out of New Delhi, India. As we define, our core purpose is essentially to partner with businesses for the long term as their managed network services partner. As part of our overall managed services portfolio, we cater to managed bandwidth, managed security, firewall, and managed Wi-Fi as well. Managed Wi-Fi is a very important part of our overall portfolio. Most importantly, it's the most important part from a customer's perspective. As Spectra, we do a couple of other things as well. In addition to managed network services, we also have ventured into video analytics and video solutions for our customers. Today, as Spectra, we cater to over 10,000 businesses across the country. We serve them across 150 odd cities. Our background is not just managed network services or managed services. Historically, we've been a fiber broadband and internet services provider, catering to residential customers as well as business customers. Over the last few years, we have changed our entire focus to cater to only businesses and not just fiber internet or broadband, but the entire stack of network services. We started our Open Wi-Fi journey a few years ago. We were one of the first ones in India. As I shared earlier in the day as well, our journey with Open Wi-Fi started from a point of a problem because we had customers to deploy for managed Wi-Fi and we did not have equipment, and nobody would supply us equipment during the pandemic 2020, 21, 22 timeframe. And when they did agree to supply, the prices were just not affordable anymore. And that's where my frantic call to the Open Wi-Fi community at that point in time that's how we got started. But what we've seen with Open Wi-Fi over a period of time is while our journey started from a point of a problem, but today it's more of a journey focused on opportunity that we see, our ability or the opportunity that we have to procure material or diversified supply chain, be it hardware or software. Over the last couple of years, and I would say more over the last 1 year or so, since 2022 onwards, we've been deploying Open Wi-Fi APs rapidly. Today, nearly 70 to 80%, maybe even a few months, even 90%, 100% of our AP deployments are all Open Wi-Fi. Till date, we've deployed something like 25,000 odd APs, which include all vendors. Currently, we are on APNOS 2.10 and uCentral 2.9. So as a managed Wi-Fi solution provider, we essentially cater to the entire stack. We are the single point of contact for our customers, which means that right from design, deployment, ownership. So we even own the solution, and we provide managed Wi-Fi to a lot of different types of customers. So whether it is shared living or student housing, professional housing, whether it is small business customers, large business customers, colleges, and so on and so forth. And we've been deploying open Wi-Fi increasingly so across all of these different types of customers. We've historically been working with Kenstel and Inventum as the two Indian vendor partners that we have. Kenstel does the hardware and Inventum does the software. We've also been using the AAA authentication billing from Inventum historically. While there have been good stuff, we've got all the support that we needed and so on. But a couple of things that we've had is the maturity life cycle of the ecosystem, technology, vendor, and so on. It has obviously become much better over the last few months. And to put it in context, it is few months out of a couple of years, right? So, and it continues to become better and better. But we are also looking forward to exploring other options out there in the market today, as we continue to grow and scale. Our expectations from the community are primarily towards the analytics part. We would love to see more user and equipment analytics in terms of what problems they are facing and so on. Because as we go in, as we deploy more of this stuff in the managed space, while our own expectation when we started this journey was that, hey, we've got a business customer and we are catering to a business customer, what we realized eventually is that that business customer has 100 users or 500 users, whether it is their employees or their residents, whatever the case might be. And suddenly we started getting calls directly from those end users, which is not what our earlier expectation in life was. But as we started getting those calls directly, we realized that it is imperative for us to have user level analytics, so that we can identify the problem and fix the problem. Because one of the experiences that we've had is often, which is one user problem gets amplified into a site level problem. And today we don't have enough proof points to say that this was a user level problem and not a site level problem, right? And I'm sure you can understand how tough it becomes to manage a customer after that. So, yeah, that's from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Udit. And we'll have a chance to ask each of the presenters questions. So I think we'll let them go through the flow and then get to that. I'd like to invite Andy Davidson, once the clicker works. I'd like to invite Andy to discuss the experience he's had as part of Ask4 Group. Thanks, Andy.
Thank you. Thanks, Ketan. It's a real privilege and honor to be here and talk about our deployments in a real live site with OpenWiFi. Just to set the scene and context, I've got a couple of slides that explain why it is we're so interested in OpenWiFi. So who are we? Why do we buy so many access points? We're a 23-year-old business established in the United Kingdom, and we seek to serve wireless access, internet access to shared buildings, places where lots of people live at one address. Apartment blocks, lots of student housing, some retirement complexes, a little bit of business parks, anywhere where there's lots and lots of people at one address. And we provide internet service, and the people that use our internet service get their access almost exclusively via Wi-Fi. It wasn't like that on day one. We provided lots of ports in people's bedrooms and they plugged in their laptops, but now almost nobody does. The vast majority, over 95% of the interfaces that we serve with good quality IP are over wireless last mile. We serve in 12 countries, so we we serve $60 billion worth of buildings, so we see a wide variety of expectations, use cases, speeds, end user types, and we're really, really good at the managed Wi-Fi in those environments. And the context as well that I thought was worth setting was just before we started deploying OpenWiFi, this was the scene in the room. This was the challenges where we operated. Broadcast media is not what our end users are now doing to enjoy movies, sports, TV, music. They're all consuming personalized individual streams of IP for their broadly video services that they're enjoying around the clock. What used to be the internet service delivering small lightweight applications has been replaced by people getting 15, 18, 20, 40 megabit streams to their own devices all at the same time, all 400 of them living in one place. And people's expectations of the service that we're delivering have also increased. Every home is now, as well as being a home, it's also a meeting room. It's also a TV studio where if you're talking to lots of people at once, always on really means always on now. We've been saying always on for years, but now it really means always on. And if people can't get generally to their video conferencing services that they're using all day and all night, they will phone us and they will tell us. But consumers are placing, at the same time they've got this expectation, they're placing enormous price pressure on us as service providers for the services that we deploy. The UK market, which is our largest market, 3/4 of the buildings that we serve in the UK, price is eroding by about a quarter a year, or the price expectations eroding by about a quarter a year for high-speed internet services. So we've got to deliver high availability, better availability than ever before, higher speeds than ever before, and people are willing to pay a quarter less each year for the same services. In addition, the actual people who are our customers are actually the operators of the buildings that we serve, and the operators of the buildings that we serve have a certification that they have us working to called Wired Score, which determines the performance parameters of telecom services and other resources within the building where people live, a minimum standard if they want to achieve like a gold standard or a silver standard or a platinum standard. The services that we deploy in these shared buildings have to meet high availability standards, resilience standards, availability standards, so that the operators that provide residential services in those buildings can assure their users that the telecom services that we deploy amongst other utilities in the building meet a certain standard. So everything that we have to do and everything that we test as part of our OpenWiFi deployment is sitting within the context of larger scale. We want to do this everywhere and we want to do this consistently, high quality for the operator and for the end user. So let me talk about a real OpenWiFi deployment that we've done in the context. We've done it in the building where this bedroom is. This is a real bedroom where a student lives. It's probably been tidied up before the photograph. You might notice that it's much more luxurious than the dormitories where you went to university, and it's certainly more luxurious than where I lived. And it sets the scene for the quality of the service that we're expected to deliver. If you live somewhere as nice as this, the internet's supposed to work right. We deployed OpenWiFi in a real, live, revenue-bearing, customer-facing, a real site where people live and people pay us to produce the internet. So it had to work. It was deployed at a really high-end student property, a short distance from the office, and we had to meet a high expectation for the operator of the building and the people that lived there. And generally, the deployment that we did was part of an OpenWiFi journey, which we're expecting to be lab tests. We did some lab tests to make sure that the equipment that and the software would work when we tested it within our lab at our HQ. The proof of concept at the site I've just mentioned. assuming that was high quality, we would productionize it and harden it so that we could replicate the service at scale, and then we'd start to deploy. And so this is the story of that. Why did we do the trial? We wanted to assess the technical suitability of an open Wi-Fi deployment with one of any number of technology partners for the hardware, and the software, the controller software, assess what the end user performance was like. Does this work as well or better than the solution that's currently deployed in the service in the building where people live? And assess the quality of the partners. And we selected, for this particular site, a hardware partner as EdgeCore, who run a great Wi-Fi 6 access point, the EdgeCore EAP 104, and the controller vendor that we wanted to use, which was NetExperience. We built a lab, as I mentioned at the first stage was to build a lab. Let's see what happens when we set this up in our warehouse. Can we provision it as a way we expect? Can we monitor it in the way we expect? Does the RF work in the way that we expect? When we do RF simulations in Ekahau, when we build it in the real lab, or does it have the same shape? Do things work as we expect them to? The lab allowed us to get to grips with the controller. Does the documentation say this will happen? Does it happen in reality? Yes, no. We could do those sorts of tests. So essentially, in a sentence, it allowed us to build both the confidence and the competence that if we made a deployment in a real site, it wouldn't fail, and we would be able to support it. How did we choose the site that we chose? Well, it had an existing deployment that we could leave in place. There was no, if it did go wrong, we could fail back to the other APs, shake everyone's hand and go, that was great, or rather it wasn't, and move away. It was 2 miles from our HQ, so if we had to go to site to perform large numbers of tests, we could get there by walking. It wasn't difficult to send talented people to site to work out what was happening. It was a really normal building for us, relatively modern construction. 300 people lived there, which is about the normal size for us. We had a good relationship with the staff, so that's a good starting point if you're doing something and you don't know if it's going to work or not. There was already Cat 6 to every bedroom, and an RJ45 wall socket that we could pop off and attach one of the APs via a bracket. And we had permission from the site operator to leave agents the way we could run synthetic tests as well. The EAP 104, the AP that we used, was added to Ekahau in February 23, just in time, so we were able to, that's not how we design an entire floor, but it's how an AP, the beacon pattern for a single AP helps us work out where to install access points to get the largest amount of coverage for the smallest amount of spend. I guess that's what everybody does. A building looks like this, so in the context of what the real site looks like, we put we work with a telco partner. We run very little of our own last mile, so we buy a last mile from a telco partner. We connect that circuit to equipment that we own and maintain in a telco run room in the MDU. We connect that to a gateway that's our proprietary software and hardware. We connect the gateway to a core switch and a bunch of access switches. The access points connect to the access switches. Very, very simple design. We use this everywhere. Here's an optimistic headline. Fortunately, we had the chance to test NetExperience and TIP's bug response. In the first week of testing, we ran the OpenWiFi service on a hidden SSID and did a week of intense testing. Doing that showed us some showstopper bugs, and that was actually fine because we were able to work with NetExperience and say, we found this and we can't use this unless it's fixed. And we were able to work with the incredibly talented people at TIP, to the developers within the community that were able to put the fixes into a release candidate of software and get builds into our hand very, very quickly so we could see if the flaws that we discovered were fixed. We were doing this on a real-time basis. Now, this isn't the first generation of radio technology that we built in this environment. So we're good at testing fixes, we're good at finding flaws, but we were impressed with the speed at which fixes were delivered into our hands when we were finding bugs. And we were finding odd bugs like the 104 had the same BSS ID on all the access points. A non-Latin character in a DHCP request caused a really, really interesting failure mode that caused the AP to bounce on and off the controller. There were some challenges with the RRM that meant that the full spectrum wasn't deployed within a site, which might be fine in an enterprise environment, but isn't fine in an MDU environment where you've got, you know, in a building with 300 people living there, maybe 1,500 devices at night trying to speak to us. Right? We need to use all of the spectrum. So we did find some flaws. We were really impressed with the speed at which we were getting builds that fixed those flaws. That's the sort of thing that builds real confidence in the solution and the partners that you're working with, real confidence. So after those flaws were fixed, we turned off the radios on the existing in-place access points. We put the production SSID on the edge core APs running the OpenWiFi solution, and did it work? First of all, we've got active monitoring on the NetBees agents that we left around the building. So they were doing synthetic tests before the migration. They carried on doing synthetic tests after the migration. They were able to show that performance was equivalent. We also have proprietary logic on our own gateway that allows us to test the RTT between gateway and each of the client devices, and we can see if the layer 1 performance, wired and wireless, performs the same before and after a change. That's one of the ways that we assure the service is working and is a well-trodden, well-tested behavior for us. But crucially, there are another 300 test agents on site, and some people call them residents. They phone up when it doesn't work, and there was no change in the support call volume before and after the migration to OpenWiFi. That means it works. Does it work for Ask4? It works on site, but does it work for us as a business? We're still working with developers and net experience when we find features missing or things that we need to change, but we've got a release candidate that we can use on sites. The commercials with, we want to work with more than one AP hardware vendor, but we're really, really happy with the AP hardware vendor we've done this trial with, and really I want that to be one of the vendors we're using. We're still finalizing commercials there. The fact that we've got so many hardware vendors we can pick from is a good thing for us. It's one of the reasons that we like the OpenWiFi solution. We need to onboard the other vendors. EdgeCore's working fine. We can show it in a deployment. The fact that there was some EAP 104 specific behaviors we identified in the first deployment means we do need to run lab tests each time we want to pick a new version, like a new generation of the AP hardware or a new AP hardware manufacturer. So where are we along that timeline I showed earlier? I showed these dots, the lab, the POC. Where are we? We're still moving down this line. But that's a good thing. That means we're chasing mass deployment. We're at the productization stage. This means that we've got to finish. This will be complete when we've finished negotiating a long-term commercial framework for the controller and the access point hardware. It'll be finished when we've added our controller, the Net Experience controller, to our proprietary orchestrator, the thing that manages our business intent and reflects that in the configuration that's rolled out onto equipment at site, or the controller in this case. And when we've got sales materials for our customers to explain what we're doing and why, support methodology so that our first and second line agents can support the kit, installation methodology for all the stuff. This sounds like a lot of work, but it's the sort of thing we do when there's a generational change in the AP hardware that we use anyway. So it's quite normal work for us, but we do have to do this before we can move into the final phase, which is mass deployment, which we expect to do the end of next year, after a ton of deployments during the course of the year. That's that. I'll be around for questions at the end, as Ketan said. Thanks.
Thank you. I did actually just want to say thanks so much to both Andy and Udit. You know, I did ask them to give a unvarnished, honest view of what their deployment was like, and I think that's what's coming through. I mean, the feedback that we're getting is really valuable, and I think the whole idea of this session is to be honest, and you can ask the kind of more direct questions as we go. I think I'd like to kind of call up Tang Tai from EdgeCore, and he's going to talk through, from the other. We've heard from the customer. Now it's good to hear from the provider what their experience has been. Over to you.
Thank you, Ketan. So I'm going to share our learning through working with different POC and initial deployment. HCore is a fully owned subsidiary of Atom Technology. Atom has been building ODM hardware for over 30 years. We understand the quality and services required to support the industry. So we are using the same team and the same quality control process for the OpenWiFi and the OpenLAN switch. I showed it previously in previous session, so I'll skip this one. So I will show this one. EAP 101 and 102 are two of the first Wi-Fi 6 AP we contributed to OpenWiFi and also be widely used in field deployment and initial deployment. And also in Atom's office and factory, we are also using EAP 101 running OpenWiFi stack. So we've been probably the first enterprise space to adopt OpenWiFi solution. And around the same time, we also has a continuing cooperation with Taiwan's National Jiao Tong University. So one of their building, I think the computer engineering, also deployment OpenWiFi through EAP 101. So we are both Atom and the university are doing the field trial initially, probably 2 years ago. And we found these two AP were mostly deployed in the education campus and NTU. Some are also deployed in hospitality, but not that many, probably because of the pricing and the size. So then we released the EAP 104 WordPress AP. This one is specially designed for the hospitality, especially in the hotel or the meeting room or small room deployment. It can be WordPress mount as well as like a wall mount. We do provide an option for desktop, but other than like a demo purpose, we haven't seen any deployment through the form factor yet. For this EAP 104, we have two SKUs. The full SKU come with like a PoE out support and also with BOE and ZBit. And for some of the deployment case, our customer told us they don't need a PoE out, and probably they also will not use the Bluetooth and ZBit. So we also later produce a version, data version called EAP 104 Lite, which will be provided to our customer as a better pricing. We also have EAP, OAP 100 Outdoor AP. This one has an optional LT uplink. It's also a full design outdoor AP at the wide operating temperature range, and also it's IP68 rating. We have two SKUs, built-in antenna and the external antenna SKU. Currently, we are building its Wi-Fi 6 version we call OAP 101. It's under a certification process. We will announce it around end of this year. And the AFC part probably have to wait until next Q1. We are still testing that. We are very looking forward to tip support on the AFC side. Then I'd like to show some other like a trial case we supported in last 2 years, in addition to NT just share about the S4. This one is on Dublin, Ireland. We have been working this probably for more than 2 years. Start with a smart pole field trial 2 years ago, and use HCore's Telegram product to connect the smart pole. Use Telegram smart pole with those smart pole that don't have the fiber uplink. And the same time, at that time, I think it start with our Wi-Fi 5 AP. EHS 5210, and for the one they announced early last year and early this year is use our EAP 101. At the same time, we also provide our OAP 100E. This is show the two installation scenario there. One is like when EAP 101, they install into the smart port, like they install our Wi-Fi 5 AP before. For the OAP 100, they install in this, they call smart trace can or something in there, because they need to hide the AP, so they require external antenna. They want to have a cable to put an antenna outside of the can. Then the test was the test the run for Wi-Fi for EU and also Open Roaming. Next experience is the controller, and the HF0 also provide another Wi-Fi 6 AP to show the compatibility of Open Wi-Fi. Next, I will just show like another few cases we directly support from HCOM. The first one I just mentioned from National Jiao Tong University, now called National Yanmin Jiao Tong University, because the two universities merged last year. We also work with Candela to do a POC in India. So Candela make a video on YouTube so all can see that POC there. Then we also work with Sync Wi-Fi in Kenya for EAP 101. Then Single Digit just announced the POC last month. Use EAP 104. We also did a POC public Wi-Fi with an operator in Pakistan. They use EAP 101. And the last one is in Brazil, also use EAP 101. We also have other more recent POC. Most of them were using EAP 104. So I showed this roadmap previous in previous session. So we keep on adding new hardware to the Open Wi-Fi compliant space. In addition to this AP, we probably had another like a model from Wi-Fi 5, which I don't list them here. The switch side, we start to see more like a partner interested in including OpenLAN switching into the deployment and testing from our cloud controller partner and also from our MSP customer. Currently, we have a model supporting OpenLAN switching, and the chipset including Broadcom, Marvell, and the Realtek. We are working on a really cost-effective platform, which we probably will announce in November or December. Our team has been working on that for several months. Originally, we are not sure we can put a user agent into that such a small footprint switch. The reason we think we can do that, it will be a really cost-effective switch. Then we plan to announce it in one of the orders meeting in December. So I will not show the platform here. So this is our Marvell, Realtek, and the platform, and we are going to add another platform pretty soon by end of this year. This ends my update. Thank you.
Thank you, Tang Tai. I'd like to invite Udit, Andy, and Tang Tai to come up. We have Tiago Rodriguez from the WBA to run a panel. I think the objective is really to front and ask some of the questions that we've been thinking about and whatever other questions Tiago is thinking about. Thank you.
Thank you, Keaton. So please, Udit, Andy, TT, feel free as a seat. First of all, thank you for the fantastic presentations that all of you did. And this panel is all about discussing and brainstorming the lessons learned from implementing Open Wi-Fi and coming from this real life deployment. So theoretical, we can discuss a lot of learnings, but I think coming from these three gentlemen that are here, that they had deployments on the field, they have a lot to share with us. So I will start immediately with you, Andy. If you can summarize from your perspective, what are some of the key learnings that you got from a positive side of using OpenWiFi as part of your portfolio of products?
Thanks. So that's a great question, because it's not just the, I talked very much about the retail side of the benefits during the presentation, but as an organization, we need to derive a number of benefits as well, and the supply chain benefits that we get, being able to work with a wider number of hardware partners with the same software is an incredible benefit. That's not to say that the hardware partners we've been working with are not first rate, but the year 2020 told us that you can never have enough friends. We were only able to continue trading and growing, rather. We were only able to continue growing and adding access points by being incredibly nimble and onboarding a new access point partner that we really hadn't expected to that year. That affected our program of work that year. It affected both in software development, in installations. We had to learn very quickly a new way of working with a new partner to carry on, because our largest proprietary partner was unable to deliver. And the same experience Udit had when they then said they were able to deliver, the pricing had doubled. That doesn't work. As I talked about in my presentation, that long-term pricing agility and commercial edge is what gives us the ability to work with building operators on projects which are 2 or 3 years out from being finished. We need that reliability, and that's something that we're going to get as an organization through the OpenWiFi program.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. Very good point on the pricing, and perfect. And over to you, it's special coming from India market. Could you share some of your learnings as well? And if you agree with Andy, that price is a key element as well.
Yes, I agree with Andy that price is a key element. One of the good experiences that we've had, or rather the excellent enablement that we've had, is because of a cost-effective enterprise-grade solution, right? We've been able to bring enterprise, or rather take enterprise-level services to a set of audience, to a set of customers who we wouldn't have been able to earlier. The problem that we've seen or we've experienced continuously in the Indian market is there is equipment available at the two extremes, right? You've got the residential broadband Wi-Fi router, and then historically you've had the more expensive enterprise grade AP, right? And now if you are a business, right? If you are a company with 100 employees, 50 employees, if you are an education institution, it was just unaffordable to deploy the historical, the traditional vendors because of the expense, and technically the Wi-Fi router just didn't work. But we actually saw a lot of organizations just using Wi-Fi routers, right? Like what you would essentially use at home, because there was no cost-effective solution in between. And with OpenWiFi, we've been able to take enterprise-level services or enterprise-grade AP access point, etc., to such customers, which is like 99% of the market in the country.
Okay, so you see that OpenWiFi coming to fill a gap that exists between those high-end and somehow low-end, let's say, residential type of APs.
Yes, and the other experience, the good experience that we have had, as one of the things that Andy talked about, is multiple vendors on the hardware side. What I would say is it's not just a matter of multiple vendors, it's also a matter of having hardware which is more useful, right? For example, we are still deploying like 99% is still Wi-Fi 5, right? Because nobody wants to pay for Wi-Fi 6 right now, right? But if there was a customer, and sometimes there are a customer who wants Wi-Fi 6, right, and is willing to pay for it, we can just use a Wi-Fi 6 AP from one of the open Wi-Fi vendors, right? We don't need to go to a completely different vendor altogether. The software platform stays the same, and so on and so forth. So the good stuff happens then.
Good. TT, let me ask you for your global perspective. You as a manufacturer, you have sales and deployments all over the world. So learnings from those global perspective from your side?
Okay. I think we are excited to see the OpenWiFi also include OpenLAN switching into the management. I think it will be very helpful to the future deployment for our customer. As a hardware vendor, we actually work with many different customer, ODM customer, and also the end customer. Then what we learn is like through integrate or combine wire and wires under the same control management, not just provide single management interface, also provide the foundations of network automation and enhanced security. For example, if one want to configure AP and the network properly just for the simple configuration like VLAN, without a single controller, it will become complicated and easy to make a mistake. So through the same management interface under the same control, I'm hoping OpenWiFi community can provide some automated features such as if I configure VLAN or SSH on the AP, so the same port on the switch will be automatically configured. That one is like pretty obvious. At the same time, also like enhanced security. In enterprise, one of the security holes, like if someone connected unauthorized AP into the switch, what will happen, even MDU case. Then with this combined, we can enable like, for example, one approach like we can enable the port security on the switch. On the case, then any unauthorized AP be connected to the switch will not be connected to the network. That's one thing. And also other like a more complicated features such as like a dynamic VLAN assignment, or you upload some of the AP's processing like bandwidth management or thing into the switch hardware. It will highly help the network efficiency and also kind of like lower the AP hardware requirement, because switch traditionally have all the hardware capability to process in this kind of thing. If you want to process into the inside the AP, most of AP cannot do that without losing a lot of processing power. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. And of course, if you have questions, please raise your arm and we can make this dialogue more interactive. Yeah, there is one question there. Yeah, so we are talking open. The microphone is coming.
So we are talking OpenWiFi is so great and it's ready to deploy, it's being deployed. We know there are legacy businesses that are doing Wi-Fi solution quite a lot, and it's a huge business. How do you think OpenWiFi will influence those to change, or will they just die?
Who wants to start?
Are you referring to Wi-Fi vendors, or
I mean the solution vendors. You can now deploy Wi-Fi solutions in hospitality, in residential, there are already established vendors and already established, let's say, legacy Wi-Fi, we call it here. And how do you think they will respond to the open Wi-Fi and spreading adoption of open Wi-Fi? And what can be the challenges to open Wi-Fi provided by those vendors?
I think that's a good question. I think that there's no real difference between the advantages that a systems integrator, for example, can derive from open Wi-Fi as we do. A systems integrator can use open Wi-Fi to work with a broad portfolio of hardware solutions with the same software set, and therefore deliver a high degree of consistency across their entire portfolio of managed wireless estate. That should mean that enterprises that are consuming services from those integrators or managed IT support services can offer higher levels of support, or will benefit from better levels of support and a clearer or an earlier upgrade path if necessary. And I don't see them. I don't see them struggling. I see that this world creates them a better product.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone, TT, you want to add anything else?
Yes, I think we can use like an example. If we view OpenLAN as a product company, then basically all the community company inside this community create a virtual brand. For example, there might be few hardware vendor create high quality hardware, running on same set of AP NAS or switch, and then managed by the same different control, but the origin from the same cloud SDK. Then this kind of combination innovation is hard to be made by a single company. So I think around the time the OpenLAN switch will become like more and more like a powerful.
Yeah, coming back to you, Dirk, there is a question, Steve.
So maybe it's along the same lines as Taras, and maybe this is really for Andy. It's probably a little less for you did in the India market, but you've been deploying one or more of the incumbent vendors to date, presumably on the enterprise side. How do your customers view it from a brand perspective? You know, I mean, does your customer say, hey, I need Cisco, you know, I want to see that logo, or, you know, whoever, versus coming in with an EdgeCore label that's visible to your customers? What's the general reaction that you're seeing, and how do you anticipate that?
The different clients have a different set of perceptions, different set of behaviors, and a different set of norms. That the vast majority of occasions we're selling a managed service and we're not leading with a particular vendor's name as part of that solution. So an operator will work with us and they'll say, we're building a building, it's going to have 400 bedrooms, you need to provide service at 250 meg over Wi-Fi, gig on the wired, and it's up to us to determine the technical solution for the gateway. You know, for the line into the building, they don't care what we do for the line into the building. The gateway, the way we configure it, the switch network around the building, and then the access points. We have to assure that the service will work in accordance with the contract, and it's most common for the operator to leave that to us. That isn't universal, and you've hit upon an interesting case. We've worked with vendors that are unwelcome in some markets. So there are occasions where it's not possible to deploy an access point manufacturer that we use in various continental European countries in others, for example. Or if a client might say, here's a hardware compatibility list that's imposed on us by our investors, which is normally not an allow list. It's normally a list of vendors that they don't want you to deploy. We can work with that, but actually we like to work with clients that we've got a long-term relationship with, who say, yeah, these are our requirements from a feature capability. It's your job to make it work. But I do expect some of our more technically, not every one of our clients employs somebody as my equivalent to work on product roadmap and technology capability, but some do. And I expect to be engaging with those particular clients over the course of the next 12 months with an appropriate message that's along the lines of, these are the advantages, and that's really about supply chain availability, speed to deliver, our forward-looking product roadmap that will take advantage of an open and disaggregated framework. I managed to say the sentence, rather than leading on price, because although there is a price advantage, that's more about our long-term price stability than it is the price point, because the price point isn't super different.
Right. So it sounds like for the most part, at least with the customers you've initially engaged on this, it's more about the outcome that you as a service provider assure, and less about kind of the nuts and bolts of how you actually do that.
That's right. And I wonder if that is similar in India. I think there could be something, I don't know if that's the same experience you have in your local market.
So that's mostly the experience that we have, and there are all types of customers. Some of the business customers do come back to us and say that, so first of all, by and large, customers don't care about the brand, right? They care about what they are paying and whether it serves their purpose or not. And that's why we exist. So our pitch to our customers is, why do you care what's written on it, right? I'm here to guarantee that it will work, and it will work within your budget, right? That's the important part. Because as Andy said, I have not come across a customer who has a CTO like Andy, right? I mean, most of the businesses, majority of the businesses, actually all of the businesses cannot afford to have skills, that we as managed service providers have. So that's the major part. So, and that's the sweet spot as well, right? They don't need to worry about what technology and what brand and what name, et cetera, et cetera. But sometimes we do come across customers, and sorry to say this, but it's mostly the CTOs who want to talk about, I want to have an Aruba access point or a Ruckus access point, and I want this and that and whatever else it is, right? We try to convince them that it doesn't matter to them. But if they are too adamant, we do give them a quote. And what we've also seen is that they will take the quote, they will look at the price difference, and then they will go with what we said they should do in the first place, right? Because that's been our experience. Yeah.
Thank you.
And following on this question from Steve, maybe looking to improvements that we can make on OpenWiFi, do you see gaps that need to be addressed from the community in terms of training, documentation, information that probably you guys as a multi-vendor managed service provider, you got from other brands like Cisco and Ruckus that have academies and they have a ton of capabilities that they provide to you. Do you see that as something that the open Wi-Fi community should try to develop and build?
I think that, I'm trying to think how to say this without sounding really flippant, but we've got access to the code with OpenWiFi, and that's a step above what Ruckus have ever given us. Right? So there is a, when we place a bug, I then, if I really care about it, might join the stand-ups and say, can I read how you're going to test this and make sure that the test that's being written is going to test the flaw that we've got. That you just don't get that with someone that might have an industry-leading certification regime or something like that. Documentation is good, of course, because we do want to read the documentation and because it does help us understand and triage and troubleshoot and be less of a burdensome customer than we will bother to read the documentation. So if the better that exists, or the better documentation exists, the more of an advantage we'll all derive. But there's a documentation burden. How many times have you bought from a vendor that hasn't kept documentation up to date? So as much as I would say documentation would be really, really beneficial, a documentation regime that keeps it up to date is the greatest gift that the community could provide to itself. Certification I less care about. As an employer, I care less about certification than I care that someone who's got a wealth of experience on a whole host of vendor implementations. And so if you've seen 20 network implementations, when you come along and work on this one, it'll feel really comfortable versus someone that's just got a certification in a technology that we use. But yeah, the documentation point is more key.
Yeah. TT or Udit, any comments from your side?
Yes. I first mentioned, we are using the same design team and quality control for our customer for each core brand. But before OpenWiFi, we actually had hard time to approach customer like S4. Probably they will not listen to each core to use a complete solution. But right now, because of this open architecture and the community, then I think each partner can play their best part. For example, we are really committed to creating very high quality hardware product and service. That we can continue doing that. Then with the high quality software from OpenWiFi, then customer like S4 will use our solution. So before that, it's really hard for us to approach the kind of customer.
I'll just add, actually, I have a little bit of a different view. I think obviously documentation is very important, but I also think certification is important, not because we need it as a service provider, but I think it's important for the ecosystem to grow. As I think back, I think one thing that Cisco did excellent for itself was CCNA. When I was in college, everybody wanted to be a CCNA, right?
It's a reputation thing.
Absolutely, right? And therefore certification goes a long way, because it helps you enroll stakeholders beyond what is obviously visible. So and therefore, from the strength of the ecosystem point of view, I think certification would be a very interesting thing to have.
Question?
My question was actually fairly similar to yours. As a community, our goal is to obviously build great software, grow the community and deploy it, and get people to experience it. And for the most part, people that adopt our solution and deploy it do it because of price. That's the number one thing we hear. Obviously, there are other advantages to it, but there's a trust factor to adopting something new, especially something that's open source, that's not kind of backed by 20 years of industry experience and products and things like that. Could you, just for our benefit from a community standpoint, what could we do better, or what was that experience onboarding OpenWiFi like in the beginning, your early kind of adoption and trial, and what could be better out of that experience? How could we break that trust barrier a little bit more easily?
So, again, it's a great question because it's obviously got us thinking. But open source is normal now. So I think that in some of our work, occasionally it comes around where you've got to prove that, although you've got the code, it's backed by a license that's one that doesn't prohibit your use of it and distribution, et cetera, et cetera. You're right. I don't think with open source people are worried about the code quality, because you can just point to the Linux operating system, the Apache and the Nginx web service, the biggest, without your large open source projects like the ones I've just mentioned there wouldn't be the web like we have it today. Right? The websites that we use, rich experiences of online applications are written in JavaScript, which is a wealth of open source libraries. Everything we use is based on open source code, and I think that question is ticked off. Where we might extend the capability of the access point, or ever need to explain that to certain kinds of customers, or certain interests within our own organization, like at a board level, the licensing question comes around from time to time, but if we're careful to make sure we always use libraries and extend code that has a very permissive licenses, you're fine. I think the open source conversation is done, and we've won it. The community and industry, wherefore the world has won it.
And then just one follow-up, which is, have you run into use cases or customers where technically OpenWiFi doesn't work, or it needs something that some other solution has? Obviously, this is part of the whole feedback loop that we want to create and overcome these, but we are new, right? 2 to 3 years, two if you're talking about the 2.0 stack. But do you run into customers or use cases where it wouldn't be viable?
If you're standards based, then you're providing the technology that's the reason people get on the phone to us. People phone us up because they want a managed Wi-Fi system. So that as long as an industry we stay focused to standards based, which means a high degree of client compatibility, good testing, then it's going to work. People are phoning us because they want a Wi-Fi solution, not an open Wi-Fi solution, but if open Wi-Fi works, that's the thing that they want. And so I'm sure that there'll be non-Wi-Fi based networking solutions that people want, and of course the Wi-Fi standards won't deliver on those, and there'll be use cases, broadcast media where people need the highest capacity or the lowest latency, and they'll use a wired solution. But for the thing that people phone us up for and say, can you provide this service, I can't imagine open Wi-Fi is not going to work.
So to the second question that you asked, we haven't come across use cases, or whatever I was trying to think of, I haven't come across use cases where open Wi-Fi as a technology did not work or did not suffice, but where our team has been hesitant a few times is because of the initial quality issues that we had, or even now once in a while when we do face quality issues, which has more to do with our current vendors and not with technology per se, they become hesitant of deploying it on open Wi-Fi. On the first question that you asked regarding the trust, etc., the thought that comes to my mind is trust is also a factor of, trust is also built by what you get to see often or what you see more often in the market. So for example, any business user can go to the market and buy a Ruckus solution from a system integrator, right? But any business user cannot go to the market and buy an open Wi-Fi solution from the market, right? And that's a major, I would say, limitation from the point of view of what is seen as trusted, right? Because at the end of the day, anybody who's making a procurement decision, right, whether it is from a technology point of view or a supply chain point of view, right, is being sold stuff to, right? And today, if you are a business customer, right, a system integrator is coming in selling you Ruckus and Aruba and Cisco and whatever else, but nobody is coming in selling you an open Wi-Fi solution, right? Whatever they might call it. They might not even call it an open Wi-Fi solution, right? Nobody's doing that. And that is, to my mind, a limiting factor, right? Because a lot of conversation today that I hear, rather all of it, is very focused on service providers per se. Yeah.
You have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question. I mean, I think we, in the Wi-Fi industry, we have three standards bodies that count. I think we have the IEEE, we have the Wi-Fi Alliance, and we have the WBA. And I think we're privileged to have Tiago from the WBA here. I think this is an opportunity to say, if you had to ask the WBA to work on or enhance a standard, what would it be? I think there's been amazing work that the WBA has done. I'm just curious from each one of your three perspectives, and Tiago, no pressure in adopting any of these, but just to hear from you, what are the things that you think that the WBA does an excellent job in driving standards across an industry, which we as Open Wi-Fi pick up and then adopt and follow? I think I'm just curious to get your perspective on what do you think is missing from a standards perspective that you think the WBA could help drive, if anything?
I love to take homework.
I don't know if it's a WBA area, but I would love to see a greater industry standardization with reference to telemetry data from the networks that we operate, because it makes it easier for us to assure the service quality no matter the vendor or implementation or version that's in use. So more similar telemetry will provide a better experience for the end user by virtue of skilling us to make better insights or derive better insights from the network. I don't know if that's your area of
No,
work.
it's an area, and we have been working a lot with Wi-Fi Alliance on different metrics and parameters that should be captured more from a standardized way. It's a tricky component. We have a specific team just looking to end-to-end QoS metrics and parameters. And yes, that's another good way or a new partnership that we could open with the Open Wi-Fi community, that we join forces, and I think we need Wi-Fi Alliance on this discussion as well, because they certify as well equipment. So we need to do this triangle that we bring the different requirements, and somehow we try to agree on a baseline level of availability of those parameters that can help us to make decisions on managing our networks.
Yes, from observation, like I think for the initial POC, I think there's a lack of training to the customer, because you pretty much rely on the, for the customer, the first layer contact point will be the cloud controller provider. And it depends on what kind of cloud controller provider, they actually will work directly or in background with the hardware vendor that's selected. Then we sometimes see this kind of like a process, sometimes it would actually take much longer than if it is like from a branded product. In a branded product, they have well-trained, like Woody said, well-trained process, you know where to purchase what kind of product accessory. But from OpenWiFi, this thing, those quite a little bit open. That's one thing I think. But I don't know if this is related to WBA. The second thing, I think is like probably with standard body can kind of like provide a set of like a quality or certify like this thing to meet certain quality standard. Then it should include the hardware, software, and the cloud controller. Then probably will be get the end customer probably easier for them to get adapted to the solution.
Yeah, let me just add one more thing. Another community that we need to bring on, and in WBI we have been doing a huge effort to motivate them to get involved, is our free suspects, Apple, Google, Microsoft, and many of the laptop manufacturers, because they have a key component of the end-to-end ecosystem.
Right.
That makes many decisions with the information that we share with them. So it's key that we get them involved as well, and in WBI we have been trying to do that as much as we can, and we have many of them involved now on a working level. Well, I know that we are way over the time. Please give a round of applause to our panelists. Thank you. I will hand over to you, Gaetan.
Thank you. Thanks very much to the panelists. I hope that was an interesting discussion. I think I just want to close with a very quick 2 or 3 slides on what we're doing from a testing, badging, and validation perspective. I think some of those issues were raised earlier, and I think for those of you who are in the first session, it's covered. But essentially, OpenLAN has a very robust, very specific way of gathering requirements, testing and validating those, and then building out a product set. But I think the one thing that we have been missing is a standardized approach to badging and validation from outside. So if someone is new to Wi-Fi, well, specifically new to OpenWiFi, how do we approach that? So there is a discussion that's happening right now, and it's going to be part of a broader community discussion around how we standardize the approach and how we essentially take some of the noise out of the system from a badging, validation, certification perspective, which I think is something we touched on lightly in the panel discussion. To put it very simply, when an OpenWiFi version and its requirements are documented, anyone who meets those requirements qualifies for a bronze badge. If your solution is tested, so for example, EdgeCore has a new SKU and it goes through the testing process for a particular release and it passes that release, it gets a silver badge. And if a solution is sold and deployed into an operator, it essentially gets a gold badge. And the TIP Exchange is an existing website and an existing system where all of these validated and tested solutions will be deployed. So the idea really is to bring OpenLAN and OpenWiFi into the fold with all the other TIP initiatives and programs and products. So I think to answer some of the questions that arose in the panel, kind of naturally and organically, is there a place where you'll be able to see if a vendor is certified? Yes. Is there going to be a place where a solution set or a set of components will be certified? Yes. And I think we have different paths along that path for vendors and solution providers to get in and for potential customers to get up to speed. So with that, I'd like to thank you very much for attending this breakout. Greatly appreciated. I think it was very insightful, and I'd like to really thank TT, Udit, Andy, and Tiago for their time and their contribution. Thanks very much for attending the session.